Welcome to the YoggNation, the Spirit of Gratitude podcast on the One Integration platform. Hello, friends. My name is Yogesh Patel, and this podcast focuses on bullying, self-awareness, and our inner spirit, inviting high-profile guests to share their experiences on these relevant topics. And today, my next guest is Joe Aguilar, a media executive based in San Antonio, Texas, where his claim to fame is publishing 2 community newsletters in San Antonio with a circulation of 150,000 copies per month. In addition, he hosts and owns a very successful sports talk radio program that puts its focus on Texas sports, including the Dallas Cowboys and Texas Longhorns. From growing up in poverty, he shares his insights into resiliency and has written a book titled For You, For Me, For Us, which is being turned into a screenplay. How cool is that? Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Yogi. I'm excited to share some words of wisdom for you and with you and your listeners and viewers and such. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Absolutely. And I call my listeners the citizens of YoggNation.
The citizens, yes, your citizens of YoggNation. Excited.
Well, Joe, I'm curious. From the beginning, you grew up in poverty. What was your mindset getting out of that cycle?
The zip code where I was born at, which is a 78207 zip code here in San Antonio, at one point was the most impoverished zip code in the country. I never knew this, but I learned that information a while back. So I was born in the heart of the West Side, of the '07 zip code. And when it rained, it literally rained inside our house. I remember putting all these buckets around and so trying to capture some of the raindrops, the dripping that was coming into our house. So, it was an interesting childhood being one of 8 kids from 2 very extremely young parents growing up.
And so how did you break that cycle to be where you are today?
Growing up with that environment, I really chose at one point, a very young age, was that I did not want to have that lifestyle moving forward, not only for myself, but for my future family, and more importantly, for my career. I knew that those were the circumstances that I needed to accept because being very young, but I always had a dream that one of these days I'm going to get out of here and not live this ordinary life that everybody around me was living. And I needed to make a choice to figure out how to get out of this cycle of poverty, that generational poverty that I like to call. And I was not going to accept that, at least not for myself. Well, it's the total.
We hear generational wealth, right? Wealth being passed down from one generation to another. What is generational poverty?
It's almost the exact same thing as generational wealth, but the opposite was that people settled for ordinary things, just like their previous generations did. In other words, they accepted their predicament, being in poverty. It was something that, hey man, if you're living through poverty, he's living through poverty, I'm living in poverty, it's all good because we're all together as one community. To them, in their mentality, they sometimes they figured that, hey man, I'm not going to do better for myself because you're not, and if you're surviving, that I'm okay with surviving. So they never seemed to have that drive. They just accepted the predicament, where I never wanted to accept that predicament. I really wanted to do something extraordinary than just be part of that cycle of, just getting by. And I knew that I had to work extra hard to get out of that cycle that still exists today. But I always encourage people to get out of that cycle. How do you get out of that cycle? Education is a key to begin with. And then, things start changing as long as, you help yourself, moving forward and make right decisions in career movements and such. So I just didn't want to live that life anymore. But I knew, being too young, I knew that once I get to that particular age, I had an opportunity and a desire, a determination, and a drive to get out of there. And I consider it, fortunate to be able to get out of there.
Did that come from within, or did you have role models growing up that you emulated?
Mostly from within at a very young age, because once again, like I said, I saw what I saw. I didn't want any part of that. But in my early years in high school, I did have one mentor, Mr. Fred Reiniger, which was my vocational printing instructor. He was a military man, but he always instilled in us in our vocational printing class was that always be a leader, not be a follower. And that phrase has stuck with me till this day, because he didn't want everybody just to follow whatever, he wanted us to be, to think outside the box instead of just, being part of the everyday thing of followers, so that was one of the first motivators that I knew that encouraged me and never gave up. And going through high school, because I consider myself quite different. I was the guy who sat over there by himself and nobody talked to, maybe a nerd, you might want to call it. I was definitely bullied.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, bullied because of that.
Bullied because you were by yourself?
Yeah, I was by myself. Yeah, I think being by myself and not being part of the group, not being part of the clique, not being part of my peers, I was different. And I knew I was different, but I knew that I needed to survive that time in my life because I always saw a better picture on the other side. I saw something better waiting for me. I just had to go through the motion of high school and such, but I always knew I was going to go to college. I always knew I was going to go away, but at first I needed to finish this thing called high school.
What was that journey like from starting out the business to where you are today?
I was very fortunate. My dream had always been to be in radio, and now I'm finally in radio. But growing up, my dream was always music. I was going to be a DJ. That was my ultimate dream. Until I found out how much these guys make, I'm like, oh, that's not a living. But I graduated with degrees in communications and in radio, television, and film. Coming back to San Antonio from North Texas State University, I started getting into the sales business. It was then that I got the sales bug, knowing that I can sell. I started working for Fox Television here in San Antonio as an account rep, selling advertising. And that was the beginning of where I'm at now. I have a passion. I created a passion of communicating with people and for the most part, selling advertising. And in 2002, I launched the West Side Soul newspapers here in San Antonio, not knowing what I was getting into. But one thing I did know how to do that was to sell ads, to sell advertising. And that was the opportunity for me to do something that not very many people in the city of San Antonio can say that they are publishers of their own newspaper that they own. And it was exciting. It has not been easy, obviously, but it's been a great ride so far.
Well, they say the good ones make it look easy, so I'm sure it came easy and natural to you.
Most definitely. And I don't consider what I do work because I really enjoy what I do. So I started the West Side Soul in 2002. In 2010, I added the South Side Soul, so it's 2 newspapers. And then in 2014, I added Overtime Sports Radio. And that is where the radio urge for me to get in finally, came in full circle. And I created Overtime Sports in 2014. Until this day, we're still airing that show. And it's been really, really exciting. A great ride so far.
But it wasn't easy, as I understood, because you had mentioned your mindset was one that failure wasn't an option, the sacrifices, the friends abandoning you. How did you come away with that resiliency? And was it hurtful?
I think the toughest part, I think the toughest part, especially in high school, was me knowing that everybody else wanted me to be part of them, wanted me to be part of that particular circle. I lost a lot of friendships growing up simply because, number one, I left, and number two, I always had that drive that they could not, maybe not match, but the same drive that they did not have. And they're like, why are you going to college? What do you think you are? What are you going to accomplish? All those wonderful things that yeah. So it was
getting to that same level that they were.
yeah, and having a different goal was not in their best interest per se in our friendships. So needless to say, I did lose some, but I knew that I would meet new people and other new opportunities will come up. So it really wasn't easy. And when in 2002, when I started the West Side Soul, people thought I was crazy simply because the newspaper industry was fading away. Internet was coming and even stronger now. I mean, now we have AI, all this other wonderful stuff. And people literally said, you're not going to make it. It's a tough industry. And I had just gotten married. I got married late in life, at the age of 38. My daughter was born at the age of 39. And I had been through several, when I got married, I had already had several jobs, and I always saw that at one point I need to settle down because it wouldn't be fair to my wife for me to just keep going from one job to another as I did in my younger life. So starting the West Side Soul was a make it or break it moment, not for the business, but for my relationship, because I never felt that it would have been fair for my wife for me to be going from job to job to job. I mean, she could have just said, you know what, I'm done with you. I'm just going to move on and take my daughter and, find somebody that's more, stable and secure with his career. So failure was definitely not an option in 2002. And there were a lot of peaks and valleys, a lot of obstacles, a lot of opportunities.
And speaking of going back to your earlier comment about shelf life, what also has a very long shelf life are books. So I'd like to understand and the spiritual themes of your book, Para tú, para mí, para nosotros.
For you, for me, for us. And it's really funny how that title came about. But the book that I wrote back in 2021, it's based out of my collegiate experiences in joining the fraternity, right? I had never been treated that way before.
Treated like what? I'm sorry.
Oh, the hazing part. I was hazed in my fraternity, and I had never experienced it.
So what were some of the parts of your inner spirit that are part of the book that you wrote?
I'm a Catholic. I'm my religion is Catholicism, and we believe in the Holy Trinity, which is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, right? That's the Trinity, three. In my book, everything happens in threes. There's an instance where there are three candles, there's three letters, there are three trees, there's a pyramid in the book itself. So every action in this book happens in threes. And that's the spiritual part of the book. It's not a spiritual book, but it's weird how it happened, because my fraternity is Delta Sigma Phi. The delta is already there in my personal fraternity. The triangle, the pyramid is already there. So the Holy Trinity pretty much comes out within that pyramid that I was already part of. So I understood that, but I added that spiritual element in that love story. And there's a lot of things that do happen in threes in this book.
Very interesting.
But the ending is tragic, but it's great though. I always tell people, if you're going to buy this book, you better get some tissues because you will cry, so but it's very spiritual in that sense.
And I think that's what is needed today.
Most definitely. I think, yeah, the environment today is very challenging. I think for all ages, all age groups, and I always say that regardless of what happens in the national level or local level, we're still going to be okay. We're still going to be, we're going to be fine as long as you are mindful of who you are, and care for those that matter to you, and you work towards the common good of everyone. I think if we all can have that mentality that we're all in this together, things can get better for everybody, regardless of what you're going through.
Is that what you see in kids, Joe? Is that what you see in kids these days when you report again this community newsletter? I assume it cover. Well, I know it doesn't assume it does cover high school sports. So curious, what are and the stories that you cover and publish with these athletes and maybe these non-athletes? What are kids anxious about today, and how could that element of spirituality that we talked about help?
Which is really hard because I think many of our children are stuck to their phones. I mean, they use this as a way out of a lot of problems that they think they might have, when in reality there's no solution in any of these. Because I mean, even when it comes to bullying, as we talked about, many people that I know of get bullied all the time on social media, but they mistake that media as something that provides relief. But in reality, it's providing a matter of social media addiction, where they need this in order to survive. And I think I made a note a while back saying that we're not robots. Yeah, you might have that AI stuff coming on, but we still have the capacity to love. We still have the capacity to show emotions and stuff. And you can't do that in this little thing. You've got to be able to still communicate with folks, still look them in the eyes, still touch people, and still the human condition. It's always going to be with us. And I feel that is being lost, that people are mistaking technology with the humanity, in us.
I agree. I 100% agree. But also, this changes, I'm sure, your brain chemistry.
Most definitely. I think that technology in itself is great. I've relied on technology in all aspects of my business, but nothing beats the handshake. Nothing beats the eye-to-eye contact. Nothing beats a hug. You just can't get that. And I think and I'm sure that if you go to a restaurant, you sit there and you watch people, you'll run into a table where every person of that nuclear family is on their phone. Instead of looking at each other and talking to each other, they're on their phone communicating with someone else, and not the people that are sitting right in front of them. And that's the biggest challenge that I have with.
So, is it a lesson that parents need to be taught?
Most definitely. I think growing up, right? Growing up, we used to use the television as a substitute. Mom's doing certain many things. She's running around, grabs a kid, puts him in front of the TV, turns on the TV. There's a cartoon. There's my babysitter. Now it's no longer that. Now it's this. And this is dangerous. It can be dangerous because you just don't know what's out there. But some of these kids are very curious, and they get bullied, and they get roped into bad things and trafficking and such. So it's great. It's a great tool to have, but it can also be extremely dangerous.
Did I hear the word trafficking?
Yeah, children trafficking, and children get caught in people taking advantage of them.
I thought you were talking about human trafficking.
Human trafficking, yes. When people get reeled in to do bad things to you, and and you just don't know. So that's the danger that I see very prevalent in what kids are now getting into. Because in San Antonio, you hear a lot of that. You hear a lot of kids.
How does your newspaper help break the cycle?
My newspaper is targeted more towards the mature adult. And although the best thing about my newspapers is that it is also online, but a lot of parents love to pick up my newspaper, and they love to read it. And we go through the most basic principles of even parenting. But it's, when I started my newspapers, it was going to be something that I was going to fight the social injustices of the city, right, or of the world. But it took a turn. At a very young stage of the news, it took a turn, and it's more based on faith, hope, and love. That is the basic premise of my newspapers. We provide faith, we provide hope, and we provide a lot of love to our listeners. And we try to give them all those three elements. I distribute to over 500 locations throughout the city, but I am the only newspaper in San Antonio that distributes to 38 churches. So I have an agreement with 38 churches. Yeah. And I had an epiphany. Something told me go to the churches. So I went to 6, including mine, and I asked the priest, I said, Father, if I give you a little announcement in my newspapers, will you allow me to put my paper in your lobby? They wanted something free. So they got their free little directory, and I had an opportunity to put my paper in their lobbies. So we started with 6, now we're at 38. And all these.
And there's nothing unselfish about it. I think it speaks to you and what you can do to serve others through the medium of a newspaper.
Most definitely, and it's considered a niche market, where and the funny part about it is that when it comes to the political season, I sell a lot of ads to politicians because this is the only way they can get into the churches. Otherwise, they cannot. Church and state in Texas, at least that is, they still can't. They don't gel together, but these churches don't have an option because my newspaper their ads is in my newspaper. It gets distributed to their congregation and it goes home with them, So that did not happen by design, but it was just another added value or an added bonus to the political arena, as you want to call it.
How do you express gratitude?
I mean, I think the gratitude that I express is it almost happens every day, and being that my paper is distributed in all these churches, I have a spiritual connection to each and every one of them, for the simple reason is that I visit most of them, and my family, my parents still have a house in that same zip code that I was born in. My brother and sister still live there. My mom just passed away here in October. My dad died at a very young age, at the age of 36. So my mom was pretty much a single parent, and she just passed. But that house is still there. Not the same house, but the same property. And I'm very blessed that I'm able to share some of my treasure with part of the community that I belong in, not only my immediate community, but the communities throughout the city of San Antonio, mainly making donations and such, and even allowing space in my newspapers for churches to promote their events and that kind of stuff. So I'm very gracious for everything that has been bestowed, upon me, but a lot of that was blood, sweat, and tears on my part. I just never settled for anything in that I have done, and it's still a daily struggle. Don't get me wrong, but it's a lot easier now than what it used to be.
Definitely, I can attest. And final question, I always like to ask this of my guests. For the person that's listening in the quiet corner of their room, what do you share with them about your life experiences, and if they're trying to overcome an instance where they're experiencing some sort of level of adversity, whether they're fighting their own inner demons, it could be bullying, it could be something else?
Yeah, I think that the what I can say to any particular individual watching this is that never give up. I think that the obstacles will always going to be there because nothing is easy. But it does take a lot of, like I said earlier, a lot of drive, because we're going to fall. I think failure is part of life. I think we're all going to fail at one point or another, but it's just a matter of getting up, dusting up, taking 2 steps back, and then 3 steps forward all the time. And as things happen, you just never quit, never give up. You can always pivot. You can always make adjustments. But once you make that decision, there's nothing that can stop you but yourself. There might be some obstacles along the way, but they're not obstacles that are too heavy to carry. And I lean on my faith quite a bit, but I don't wholeheartedly depend on my faith 100%, because I've said it before that God can take you somewhere, but you need to take yourself as well, and to that place that you want to get to. Because I always see God as being so busy that He's taking care of the harder things. You can take care of your own things. Take Him with you, but you also have to get up. You have to get up your butt and do something that you really want to do, and not be afraid, and also and be a risk taker. I'm a huge risk taker, and it's scary. But if you don't take that risk, you'll never know if you would have succeeded or not. But of course, do your homework. Pay your dues in whatever industry you want to get, but don't be afraid. And bigger things happen when you take a particular risk, but you make it you turn it around into fruition to reach that particular goal. And it's a continuation. And as things get bigger and better for you, you are able to share more of your treasure with more people. And it's a non-ending story that we all put together. And none of us can get all the glory without writing your story. So write your story. And then later on, maybe you might get a little bit of glory. You might be on YoggNation. But this is and I always tell people at 63, I only feel that I don't know, yeah, but I only feel that it's just the beginning, right? It's just the beginning of my career. So it's what's new, what's next all the time. I was looking for new opportunities, and I'm in a position where I can choose my direction instead of having to depend on it. So my next, what's new, what's next? It's my book and my screenplay. That's my what's new, what's next. So that I'm looking forward to.
Well, congratulations! You certainly have the citizens of YoggNation behind you there.
Thank you. It's exciting, but con ganas, as they say, with lots of drive. And I think we always talk in our culture, our Mexican culture. We always say about lo que Dios quiera, whatever God wants to happen can happen. And I've always told folks that, yeah, lo que Dios quiera, but what about what you want? What is it that you want out of life? Because you can decide what you want. God will take care of that, of His part, your soul, your eternity into heaven and such. But what are you going to take? What are you going to do to take care of the you here while you're still here alive in this earth? And
it kind of reminds me of the phrase, God helps those who help themselves.
Most definitely. And I always say, God will take care of your soul. He'll take care of the spirit. He'll get you, to heaven, but you're here on earth. What are you going to do with that time? He can help you, but He can't pay all your bills. You have to help yourself. And I wholeheartedly believe that with Him, everything is possible, but you also have to do your part. And I think that if everybody does their part, and, there will be failure, because you cannot succeed without failure. It's part of life.
Well, you got to be a good person to do that, though.
You have to. I mean, you really do. And sometimes you get lucky, and which is sometimes it's a good thing. But more so than often, there will be obstacles. But it's really up to you to pivot, to figure things out, and try something else, and never give up. Because when you do, it's a matter of having to start all over again, and you can't put yourself through that all the time, But I think that nuestra gente, los mexicanos, hay bastantes oportunidades, but it's just a matter of ¿qué quieres tú? ¿Qué quieres ser tú con tu vida? Es tu futuro es más importante de todo. Dios sí te ayuda, pero tú te puedes ayudar solo. Y lo que Él quiere así.
Sorry, I took French.
Parlez-vous français? Comment vous appelez-vous? Yeah, but I think that it's important that we never give up, man. Because it's just it's interesting. But I think we all have that opportunity. We all have the same equal opportunity. It's just a matter of who wants it, and it's yours, but you have to work for it.
Beautifully stated. I think that's a great way to end this segment for now. Joe, thank you kindly for coming on the podcast. And for those listeners,
Yogi, thank you so much for having me. I look forward to watching your other podcasts, and to all your viewers and all your listeners. I think Yogi provides a great outlet for us to listen to each other, take what we can from one another, and share as much as we can of the good things with everybody else. And I thank you for blessing me with this opportunity.
Estoy agradecido, if I pronounce that correctly.
Sounds good to me, bro.
Bye for now.
Take care.